Welcome to the Practicing Accountant Podcast, your go-to resource for transforming your accounting practice. This podcast is for accountants ready to take control of their business and build their ideal practice by mastering the essentials, setting the right prices, defining a powerful niche, and selling with ease. We'll dive into strategies that boost profits, attract your ideal clients, elevate your services, and help you choose the most effective pricing models. We are champions for efficiency, value, and intentionality, and adversaries of people-pleasing, bad clients, and complacency. We provide actionable strategies to help you break the hamster wheel of typical accounting work. The mission of the Practicing Accountant Podcast is simple: to enhance your experience as an entrepreneurial accountant and help you turn neglected practices into a thriving business. So, if you're ready to level up your practice, this podcast is for you. Tune in and let's get to work.
It's pep rally week, so I hear. Everyone is, not everyone, but I have heard stories of folks celebrating on Monday or Tuesday, the first deadline of this season, and very quickly turning their attention to, I'm reminded again, and I know that we've talked about this here before, but the movie Elf with Will Ferrell, right? And Santa gets back to the workshop after on Christmas Eve or whatever, and walks into the shop and everyone's dancing and they got their champagne, and he's like, all right, everybody, back to work. 364 more days till, or 65 more days till Christmas.
Yep.
And all the elves just instantly go like right back to work. That's kind of like what 315, or I guess this week it was 318.
Yep.
It's kind of like, it's like, all right, everybody, great job, way to pull together, way to give your best, and all right, back to work.
Back to work. Yep. You get about 4 hours of rest and relaxation, and then it's time.
Get an extra hour of sleep tonight.
Yeah.
I've heard steak dinners. I've heard happy hours. I've heard sleep. I've heard family. I've heard all versions of celebration of just moments to take a breath and then get ready for the next one.
Yep. That's the nature of it.
Yes, it is. Well, tell us about you did a poll, and would love if you kind of walked us through what you did, and then we can talk a little bit about the results.
Yeah. So I put a poll up on our Facebook group and my personal profile just to see if I could capture any more results, but basically asking what's stopping you from raising prices. Here's the breakdown. We had 24% said fear of losing clients. We had 9% say they don't know how to justify a higher price. 31% felt bad charging more. 9% were too busy to even think about it. And then 27% said that they've already raised prices or they charge what they're worth. So in total, 73% of those respondents have not raised prices because of these reasons, which is unfortunate, but that is the state of the industry.
So what surprised you in these results?
That what was surprising is that so many people feel bad charging more, and that drives me crazy.
Why does it drive you crazy?
I just think that you're a professional. You have this great skill set that not many people have, and to feel bad to charge people what you really deserve is wild to me. Like you've gone through school, you've got your EA or CPA or whatever certification you have, and you feel bad. This apology pricing thing, it comes back to the people pleaser, and the accountants just can't do that. Do you think attorneys feel bad about raising their prices, or doctors?
I haven't met one that feels bad about it.
I don't think so.
I think doctors have a little bit more empathy in certain situations, and I think lawyers can too. Just depends on what kind of practice they're building, right?
Sure.
If you got a family doctor or a family practitioner, I think they tend to be a little bit more gentle with how they stroke prices and what they charge. So that one stands out. Anything else besides that being a leader, feeling bad about charging more? Anything else stand out to you?
No, I think I would have expected to see more people respond with fear of losing clients is their number one reason. And that was 24% versus the feel bad for charging more was 31%. So they're roughly equal. If this were a bigger sample size, maybe they would be equal. But that's just an interesting thing. I'm glad that people they didn't know how to justify a higher price. But that question alone means that if they feel bad charging more or they are afraid of losing clients, that means that they also do not know how to justify that higher price. So that's kind of included in there. Maybe I should have thought about the questioning better, but there's
I think this is fine.
either way, there's not enough people raising prices.
Well, I also think that, I've already raised my prices is somewhat subjective, right? Because I think there's a lot of practitioners that do raise their fees annually. They might call it cost of living, or things are more expensive, or economy, or you had to hire more people, and they might find an excuse to raise prices, which usually accountants are looking for some excuse to raise prices, something that's not their fault. This isn't because of me. It's just things are more expensive, or we had to add Lucy to the team, and so I'm sorry, but I got to raise prices again. So I think a lot of accountants get away with that 5 to 10% increase, and they sneak it in the engagement letter. They don't draw attention to it. They don't notify anyone of it. They just throw it out there, and then they cross their fingers that no one's going to come back with any questions. And if they do, they'll have their excuse ready. And if the client pushes back, they'll say, hey, you know what? Whatever you paid last year, just pay that again.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you got last year, let's just do that again.
Yep.
So I think it's easy to get out with, I've already raised my prices, because I think the real question is, who is charging their value versus their worth? And the difference being, worth is the value of your time. And then value, and use this again, it's the value of your product.
Yep. Your outcome that you're creating.
Right. The value of the product and the value of the time. And those are two different things.
Yep.
I can spend an hour on something that only means, $100 to someone. That very same thing might mean $1,000 to someone else because of how they use it or their situation. So I think those numbers are, 27% for I charge what I'm worth. I've already raised my prices. I think they got out. And I'd like to dive into that number maybe someday, maybe do a separate poll of, when you raise prices, what are you raising your prices based on, or what are you trying to raise them to, or what were the reasons for your raise, or how did you, communicate that with clients?
Yep. If it's just a cost plus excuse for raising prices, it's got to be better than that.
Yeah.
Or it can be better than that.
Yeah. Yep. But back to your point on, I feel bad about charging more. I do believe, not just because of the people pleaser, but because I think accountants just undervalue their worth. And the truth is, we work in a society that undervalues accounting, period. Right. I mean, if you look at accounting departments in every company in the country, they all look at their accounting department as a cost center. It's something that they have to do.
Right. Compliance.
They have to have it in the budget. They have to get that work done. They don't care how it gets done, as long as it's done with the minimum amount of resources and expense, then we're good. Yep. And if there's anything we can do to decrease that, which, AI is unfortunately going to have a significant impact on, then they're going to do it. Yep. And I think the same thing happens for the practitioner. Bookkeepers are cost centers. Tax preparers are cost centers. Unless they're doing, significant amounts of advisory work, they are seen as something that we are trying to decrease the hell out of, because, we don't really value the fact that you're signing a return and pressing send and getting an acknowledgement from my e-file.
Yeah.
And so that comes then with, some psychological damage to the accountants that, I'm doing something that someone doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
I'm having to chart. What's that?
It's a grudge purchase.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's something I didn't. It wasn't my idea to create this tax platform. It wasn't my
Right.
idea that I had to do an audit or submit this information to the bank. I have to do it, and so if I'm going to have to do it, I'm going to do it for least amount of money I can, and that psyche, is resides not only in the customer but also in the provider. And so, yeah, I feel bad about charging more for something they don't want, is what you should maybe fill out the rest of that sentence with.
Yeah.
But that, unfortunately, because of that, I think it holds a lot of accountants back. And if you consider the alternative, or maybe just a different perspective on it, how can what I'm charging for be one of the more valuable things that my clients pay for? And that's where advisory comes in.
Yep.
That's when sitting down to go through it comes in. That's when it's more than just here's your return, on to the next one comes in. Like when it comes to 1040s, like if you can get $800 a pop, or $1,000 a pop, or more than that, like you're doing great. Like kudos to you, because it's something that a computer can do. It's something that one of these chop shops can do.
Yep. Well, if you can explain your value of your service, like walking through the tax return, I know a lot of firms that successfully upload a video explaining the return, explaining the difference between this year and last year, and why you owe more or less, or get a bigger refund or less. And just doing something like that brings more value than just submitting, just doing the paperwork and submitting and walking away and moving on to the next. There's plenty of ways to increase that value so that you don't feel bad charging more. And it's just this trap that accountants get stuck in that actually brings the industry down. I was thinking earlier that I think poor pricing and this kind of quasi price war that all these accountants get in is what has created such a terrible pipeline of accountants wanting to get into the industry, because they're charging so little that they can't afford to pay anybody a decent wage for the amount of work that is involved with this. And so no one wants to come into the accounting, and that's because of these shitty prices.
Yeah, it's definitely a potential contributor to the situation for sure. But I think the other piece of this, I feel bad charging more, and I think it'd be great just to kind of fill in the blanks, like, and again, not that we're going to, but if we did another poll to say, if you feel bad about charging your clients more, what are some reasons why?
Yeah.
And, some might say because this is something my client doesn't want to have to do, but they have to. This is something where they're looking for the lowest price, or else they're going to go somewhere else. And I think if you consider those as, those are objections to raising price, what is the counter to that? And if an accountant can come up with a counter as to why this is worth more than just bottom dollar, then they have the opportunity to raise those prices. But if they're not spending time on that, if they're not saying, to your point, like sitting down, going through the return, explaining things, like that's a value add. It's not monumental, but it's something.
Yeah.
But if you sat down with the return and said, okay, let's talk about next year's return. Like, what do we want to see different here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do we want to influence? What do we want to make sure we're better at? What do we want to make sure that we're controlling more? Where do we want to make sure we're spending more or less? Like that's then value, because then the client's doing math on dollars. Like, this is going to save me money next year. This conversation is, here's a story. So I had a conversation with one of my clients Tuesday, and we were talking about, having conversations with clients to add value. And the idea we had was, how do you have $1 million meeting with the client? Like, in other words, that time is worth $1 million. Like, what would you do? What would you provide? And, it might be the return. It might say, hey, this is a good year to do whatever, some sort of a step that in tax planning would save them a significant amount of dollars. Or it might be some structure that they create that creates a lot of tax savings. Or it might be that they do an overhaul of their operating expenses and improve their margins. Or it might be they do a better job of reporting every month so that they can make adjustments so that they get more to the top line. Whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be $1 million meeting. Maybe it's a $100,000 meeting, or maybe a $10,000
Right.
meeting. But like, just imagine, like, if you had to have a meeting with a client that saved them or brought them $10,000, what would you do? And I bet accountants would come up with great ideas if they knew their clients and they spent time with them. They would come up with ideas.
Here's the thing. They don't have that time to spend on each client like that.
I hear you.
And so raising prices can allow you to serve clients better and create the snowball effect of you create $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million worth of value for this client because you spent more time with them. Well, now you don't need, 250 returns to knock out this tax season. Maybe you need, 50, and you can serve each of those clients in a much more substantial way.
Yeah. I read an article. I think it's an older article. I think it was republished, and it was one of the accounting influencers out there interviewed a guy that has a 40-hour-a-week tax practice during busy season and like a 2-hour-a-week tax practice out of busy season, making 250 grand a year or something like that, and does all these amazing things. I think he's called the Fund CPA or something like that is the guy's name. And it's an interesting article, and it just basically does math on, he charges so much per service that adds up to 200 or 250,000, that many clients, and he only spends so much time on each of them, and that's it. And I think that's that's nice. It's a controlled, intentional environment, one of our favorite words. But the problem is he's toast as soon as AI comes around.
Yeah.
He's toast because he doesn't have a relationship with his clients. Like he's going to be replaced either by Intuit and their own automation, or H&R, or whoever. Those clients of his that he only sees once a year, they're going to go running to a much quicker and cheaper and probably better at the work itself option down the road. And so that time, to your point, needs to be spent working with clients, finding opportunities to save them money, to help them, to support them, to build that strong relationship, to create advising opportunities that'll withstand whatever automation and changes come with AI. So, I feel bad about charging more. Like, how would you feel better about charging more? What would it take for you to feel great about charging your client? And that comes from having those types of discussions, like having $10,000 ideas for your clients. And to your point, you need the time for that, which means you probably need to get rid of a lot of those clients that don't value you, where there's no opportunity for you to provide value to them for whatever reason.
Yep.
But that one, and you and I have keyed on this for a couple of years now. It's just that people pleaser, that lack of confidence or certainty that they're valuable. But when you spend all of your time doing nothing but talking about the past, you can't create a lot of value out of the past.
That's true.
I mean, you can analyze it to maybe inform the future. You can, find lessons that can be applied to future periods in the past. But the more an accountant spends time in the future and what they're doing for their clients so they have a better future, they'll feel better about charging more, and the clients will feel better about paying more.
Yep, absolutely. And probably the clients that are going to push back if you raise prices are the worst clients that you have. And you don't want those clients. I mean, the clients that already value you, even if you're not doing this advisory, if they already value you, they're not going to push back on a price increase.
If, to your point, if they value you.
Yep.
But if you're not doing anything to create value for your clients, like if you're not highlighting the value you bring or creating the value that you want, client will push back on price increases.
Yep.
Like those are the ones where you have an opportunity either to say, I need to bring more value to them so I can raise the prices, or I need to get rid of them because they don't appreciate the value that I've been working to give them.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a cart and horse there. Because, if you're just trucking along and you haven't changed your service and you raise your prices by some big amount without tying that to value,
right,
or providing that value, they're going to go down the street and find someone cheaper.
Yep. If you're commoditized, you have no pricing power. You have no leverage there.
So we don't need to beat that one up anymore. The fear of losing clients, that one to me is that's fixable. And fixable in the sense that you don't have to raise prices on all your clients. You can raise prices on the bottom 20
or any. You don't have to raise prices on any. Just start with new clients coming through the door.
Right. Yeah.
Test on that.
Thanks. Yeah. And once you get the confidence that a new client will pay the fees you're trying to achieve, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable going to those older clients to say, hey, this is my market rate now. I don't do anything less than $1,500, and I'd love to get you up there, but otherwise, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to part ways kind of conversation.
Yep.
I don't know. This 10% that can't justify a higher price, like that one, I'd love to sit down and talk to them a little bit and work with them on that. And then the ones that are the 10% that are too busy to even think about it.
Well, it's because they have a pricing problem. Yeah.
That's the hamster wheel victims, where they're just stuck in being busy all the time, or not at all. And then they show up again in November and do it again.
Yep.
But thanks for doing this poll. I think it's great, and I don't care how many people responded. The response is a response, and it allowed us to have a good conversation on it. But I think for anyone that listens and is aware of this stuff, I would challenge anyone just to provide a converse to this. If you're afraid of losing clients, what would make you excited to lose a client? If you're not quite sure how to justify a higher price, what would justify a higher price? If you feel bad about charging more, what would you feel great about charging more for? And if you're too busy to think about it, I can't help you there, other than slap you and say, come on, let's go. And for those ones who say they're already charging what they're worth, I would challenge them as to whether or not they're charging the value of their time or the value of what they're providing their clients, the outcomes.
The solution to all of these is the same. It's building confidence through building pricing power and value. Yeah. It solves every one of those answers.
Well, I think I'm just looking through this. So, and I think you nailed it. Like the very next client that shows up, just, throw out some obscene number, some number you're uncomfortable with, maybe not obscene, a number you're uncomfortable with. So if you were charging usually $500, go up to 800, see what happens. If you were charging 1,000, go to 15, see what happens. Like there's a risk of lost business, but at the same time, there's also that wonderful chance that they're like, great, sign me up, let's do it.
There's also a risk of running your firm the same shitty way next year and next year and next year and next year.
Yeah, hamster wheel. Yep, get stuck. So anyway, thanks for doing this. And anything else you want to say before we close?
Nope, I think that's it.
No, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Practicing Accountant Podcast, and we'll continue doing some polls and some other conversations around what our audience is up to and thinking, and share it with you. And otherwise, we appreciate very much you watching, and hope you like and share this episode and tune in for the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug.
Cheers.